Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S MindLab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how much you really see when you look at something? Do you feel like you take in a whole world but can't quite describe it all? So many of us feel this way, and scientists have been asking this question for ages today. We're diving into a fascinating study that tries to figure out if our visual experience is actually super detailed, like a high-definition movie, or if it is more like a sketch, with only a few key things really registering. Imagine this: you are walking through a park and your mind is just buzzing with all the sights and sounds. You feel like you are experiencing everything. But then, if someone asks you to describe it all, you might only be able to recall a few colorful birds or the shape of the trees. What happened to all the other details? This gap between what we feel like we experience and what we can actually report is a huge puzzle in understanding consciousness. For a long time, scientists and philosophers have debated this. Some think our experience is like a detailed mirror of the world, super rich and full of information. We'll call this the rich view. They believe the reason we can't report everything is because our attention, memory, or ability to speak just can't keep up with how much information is presented to our minds. It is like having a massive library, but only being able to check out a few books at a time. On the other hand, there is the sparse view. This idea suggests that the feeling of a rich experience is a bit of an illusion. The world might have a lot of information, but we only actually consciously experience a small sliver of it. To truly see something, we need to pay attention to it. Without that laser-like focus, we only get a fragment. Think of it like a spotlight. It illuminates what is important and everything else is in the shadows, even if it is technically there. The challenge is that past experiments like the famous Sperling's partial report task have given evidence for both sides, making it hard to settle the debate. In that experiment, people would see letters and then be cued to report a specific row. They could often report letters from any row if cued quickly, supporting the rich idea of a temporary, high-capacity memory. But others say this just shows a fleeting, non-conscious memory that can be accessed if directed, fitting the sparse view. It's like saying the same evidence can prove two opposite things. So, how do you get around these problems and actually figure out what is going on? These researchers have come up with a clever new approach. Imagine you see a picture, say, of a big airplane with a small suitcase off to the side. They play with attention by giving you a word cue before you see the picture, like the word suitcase. This is the pre-cue condition. In this case, both the rich and sparse views agree you'd likely see the suitcase because you were told to look for it. Your attention is guided. But here is the crucial part. What if they show you the picture first? Then after you've seen it, they give you the cue word suitcase. This is the post-cue condition. Now, when you first looked at the picture, you might have been naturally drawn to the big airplane in the center. Your attention was probably elsewhere. The rich view says, even though your attention wasn't on the suitcase, you still experienced it, and if asked, you'd likely report it. The sparse view says, nope, if your attention wasn't on it, you probably didn't consciously see it. Only a few people who happened to glance in the right direction would report it. This study uses real-life images, not just letters, and allows people to describe what they saw freely, which is a big step up from forcing them to choose from limited options. This avoids one of the major critiques of older studies, that the limitations were in the response options, not in the actual experience. To do this, they first took a massive collection of images and had lots of people describe them freely in a previous study. This helped them figure out how often people spontaneously mention certain objects. For example, if most people described an image as having an airplane, but only one person mentioned a suitcase. They categorized airplane as a frequently reported word and suitcase as rarely reported. Words no one mentioned were marked as never reported. In the actual experiment, participants would see an image for a very short time, followed by a quick visual mask to sort of erase what they just saw. Then the cue word would appear either before or after the image, as we discussed. After seeing the word and image, they'd rate how well the word matched what they saw. On a scale from doesn't match to matches with different levels of confidence. They had some clever ways to make sure the data was good. For example, they had people do the task twice. And if their answers didn't match up between the two times in specific ways, those participants were excluded. This helps ensure people were paying attention and not just guessing randomly. They created a special score called TDXC, which combined both whether someone said something matched and how confident they were. This gives them a more nuanced understanding than just a yes or no answer. Now, for the fun part, interpreting the results. They had specific hypotheses. The sparse hypothesis, H1S, predicted that for those rarely reported words like the suitcase, people would rate them much lower in the post-cue condition, when attention was likely elsewhere compared to the pre-cue condition. The rich hypothesis, H1R, predicted there would be no significant difference between the pre- and post-Q conditions for those rarely reported words. They used something called Bayes factors to decide which hypothesis the data supported more strongly, with a BF greater than 10 meaning strong evidence. Scroll pilot results. Figure 5 shows the mean TDXC value of each rarely reported word, e.g. Suitcase for figure 1 as a dot in the pre- and post-Q condition, which should show the largest difference between the rich and sparse views according to the predictions in figure 1. Per Emmy Mencken, in their pilot study, they saw some interesting things. For those rarely reported words, some results lean towards the rich view, with similar ratings in both pre- and post-Q conditions, while others lean towards the sparse view, with lower ratings in the post-Q. It was messy, but it showed the experiment could capture these differences. The main plan is to run this experiment with a much larger group of participants, up to 256, and to keep going until they have really strong evidence, either for the rich or the sparse view. They've even designed a few follow-up experiments to test different aspects, like what happens if they remove the visual mask that erases the image, or if they use more frequently reported words. This shows a real commitment to thoroughly investigating the question. Looking at the different theories is really helpful. The rich views, like Bloch's overflow argument, suggest that our visual experience is so vast that we can't possibly capture it all with our reports or attention. It is there, but hidden behind our processing limits. Hahn and Tononi even suggest our experience is unfathomably rich. Rosenholz has a hybrid idea where experience is rich but compressed like a summary of a scene. The sparse views, like Quaider's partial awareness hypothesis, suggest we only truly consciously experience what we attend to, and the feeling of richness is an illusion from partial information. Lau and Rosenthal talk about inattentional inflation, where we might think we saw something vividly without actually having the underlying conscious experience. It is clear there are many flavors of rich and sparse, and this study is designed to try and tease apart these nuanced positions. For example, even some rich views predict that while we experience more details, we might not be able to report specific details. This is where their exploratory analysis, looking at something called intersubjective agreement, basically, how often people agree on a description, comes in. They also have an interesting exploratory analysis using signal detection theory. They treat frequently reported words as a signal and never reported words as noise. By analyzing how well participants can tell the difference, they can measure how much signal is getting through even when it is not expected. This is another way to see if unattended information is processed in a meaningful way or just a confusing mess. These ROC curves, with a measure called AOC, help quantify how well people distinguish between real information and random guesses. An AUC of 1 is perfect, meaning they can tell the difference completely. An AUC of 0.5 means they're just guessing. This is a sophisticated way to look at performance beyond simple accuracy. Before they even run the main experiment, they did computer simulations. They essentially created virtual participants based on the pilot data and the predictions of the rich and sparse theories. This helped them figure out exactly how many people they need to recruit to get strong evidence. For example, a Bayes factor over 10 or under 0.1. They landed on needing up to 256 participants for each experiment. That is a lot, but it is to ensure their conclusions are robust. These simulation graphs show how many participants are needed to get decisive results. For instance, if the sparse view is true, they can, with enough participants, get a strong signal favoring that view. If the rich view is true, they can get a strong signal for that. It's a very rigorous way to plan their study. And importantly, these researchers are committed to transparency. They plan to share all their data and code once the study is complete. This is fantastic because it allows other scientists to check their work, replicate it, or build upon it. It really raises the bar for scientific research. So, what does all this mean? This study is taking on a fundamental question about our perception that has been debated for decades. By using natural images, allowing free reports, and employing clever attentional cues, they're trying to strip away the confounds that have plagued previous research. The fact that they are using a registered report format and plan for open data and code is a huge strength. It means they've pre-registered their plan, reducing the chance of them cherry-picking results to fit a pre-existing bias. The pilot results are intriguing. They show hints of both rich and sparse phenomena, suggesting reality might be complex. The formal experiments, with their large sample size and rigorous statistical approach, aim to provide definitive evidence. If the results strongly favor the rich view, it suggests our conscious experience might be far more detailed than we realize, even when our attention is elsewhere. If the sparse view wins, it means we're more selective in what we consciously register, and the feeling of rich experience outside our focus might be more of a perceptual shortcut or illusion. This research is crucial because understanding how we perceive the world directly impacts our understanding of ourselves, our decision-making, and even how we interact with technology. Imagine how this could apply to designing better user interfaces, or even developing more effective tools for training or education. The follow-up experiments, particularly removing the backward masking, are also exciting. This could reveal whether our conscious experience is truly fleeting and easily overwritten, or if it has a more durable, picture-like quality that can be accessed later. Ultimately, this study is a testament to the power of scientific refinement. By identifying methodological limitations and designing increasingly sophisticated experiments, researchers are inching closer to answering one of the biggest questions in psychology. What are we really seeing when we open our eyes? What do you think? Are you Team Rich Experience or Team Sparse Awareness? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S MindLab for more science deep dives, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the human mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.